Hi guys, welcome to my ranking of the Halloween franchise. Now, I have actually done this once before. It was about a year ago, but we now have an extra film to throw in there. And also, when I was going through my list of where I wanted to put each film in this video, I noticed that quite a few Halloween films have changed places for me in terms of where I would rank them since I did that video a year ago. So I think it's worth doing again. If it had been any other franchise apart from Halloween, I don't think I would have done this. I probably would have just waited until after Halloween Ends had come out, and then I would have had 2 extra films to throw in there. But this is my favourite horror franchise of all time, and it doesn't sit easy with me that I don't currently have an up-to-date ranking for it. So let's dive in. A quick word of caution before we do though. Some of my opinions on this franchise are a little bit controversial at times, but don't beat me up for any of the opinions you're going to hear in this video. It is simply not polite to hit a man with glasses. No, it really isn't. So, no more preamble, no more waffle. Let's get into it and find out what is my least favourite film in this series. And straight away, the controversy is going to begin. No change in this position. Once you get past the opening sequence involving the death of Marion, which is pretty excellent, actually, and a high point for the film, the rest of it is just really boring. It's full of really cardboard characters, especially the teenagers. The adult characters are a little bit better, but I've never fully bought into this idea that Laurie would be still suffering this much 20 years after Michael Myers terrorised her. I don't know, I just don't fully buy into that, especially when clearly at some point she managed to get her life together enough to have a career and get married and stuff like that. It is nice to see Jamie Lee back, but it's not enough to save this movie. The school setting is completely wasted. I mean, we get to see the boiler room, the front gate, and the cafeteria, I think. I mean, this could have been one of the greatest campus slashers of all time. But I just think to myself, where is the rest of the school? Where's the gymnasiums, the football fields, the science labs, the libraries? There's so much potential there. The movie just feels so cheap. I don't get it. It's like Jamie Lee got the whole budget for her salary somehow. I think a reason why a lot of people do like this is because you get that definitive ending. You know, if you can't be bothered to watch all 12 Halloween films, you can watch this little trilogy in isolation, 1, 2, and 7, and you get that really nice ending with Laurie taking off Michael's head. But that's not enough for me. You know, this movie is just no good. I mean, I would have given up on this one a long time ago if it wasn't for the fact that it was a Halloween film. This one's pants as well. It definitely feels like the most rushed of all the Halloween films, coming out just 12 months after the previous one. It does show. And they hired a director who just did not have the first clue what he was doing. I was just talking about how Laurie was still not over her Halloween experience 20 years after the fact. In this film, we have a character called Rachel Carruthers who is totally over her ordeal barely 1 year after her experience. So it feels like they got that backwards somehow. I do like Rachel's death. I think it's a very atmospheric scene. This film is not without merit, which is why I've put it above H2O. I love the barn scene. I think that's great. And I really like the Fonz character, with the guy with the leather jacket who gets a little rake thing in his head. As short-lived as his part is, I do enjoy that. But overall, the film is really weak. Loomis is just horrible to watch in this film. The Jamie Lloyd-Michael confrontation at the end just feels like something we've already had in the previous one. I mean, where's the continuation of the story as we left it at the end of 4? Just resetting the whole thing and doing the exact same thing over again is just not good enough for me. The Myers house looks absolutely awful in this. I'm not one of those people who hates Tina. I mean, I don't particularly like her, but I don't think she's horrendous. There are worse things to talk about this film. Sheriff Meeker, what was going on with his character in this? He's completely forgotten his daughter died 12 months ago. I mean, he just plods through this film with no emotion. Then you've got the man in black wandering around. The good news is, this is the last of the really bad ones. I didn't watch this one until I was 35 years old, I will admit, because I was a snob. and I didn't want to watch a Halloween film that didn't have Michael Myers in it. I was completely wrong about that. I hold my hands up. All I was doing was hurting myself that whole time by not watching this excellent film. And it is an excellent film. It's very original. It's got a great ending, a great performance by Tom Atkins, who carries the movie so well. This film is so good, it actually makes me feel like I wouldn't mind if they did more anthology films after Halloween ends. I mean, do we really want to jump into another Michael Myers timeline straight away after that film comes out, or could we do with a little break? I'm sort of the opinion that we could maybe do with a little break, and even if they did another anthology film and it bombed, would that matter? Because if you do another Michael Myers one after that, people are still going to flock back for Michael Myers. So there we go, just my opinion. But in terms of Halloween 3, I would still rather watch any kind of good Michael Myers film than this. But that obviously doesn't apply to Halloween H2O and The Revenge of Michael Myers, hence why Season of the Witch does avoid finishing at the very bottom of the pile today. It is a good film. I am the world's biggest Halloween Resurrection fan. I am convinced of it. In my video today, I have it 9th out of 12 in my Halloween rankings. If you can find me another video on YouTube where anybody ranks Halloween Resurrection higher than what I do, throw me a link down in the comments below so I can check it out, because I just don't believe you. I think I rank this film the highest out of anybody in the world. I genuinely do like it. I find it really entertaining. If this was the film after the original Halloween, it would be really jarring and I probably wouldn't like it. But in the position it comes in the series, just tucked in behind H2O, a film I just don't really like at all, it sort of works for me as a follow-up to that film. The only things I don't like about it are the opening 15-20 minutes in the asylum, where Laurie gets a really unsatisfying end, and I don't like the very end of the movie where Busta Rhymes starts F-bombing over and over again. But everything in between I really enjoy. I like all the characters, they just really amuse me, especially the blonde girl whose name I tragically forget right now. I like the lead girl as well. All the characters, just, I have a good time watching them in this house. It's good fun. And Myers is alright, I don't mind him. Yeah, the bit where he gets smacked down by Buster's a bit too much, but you can nitpick a lot of the films in this franchise. This one more than most perhaps, but for some reason this film really works for me. I even like the two kids at the party across the street who were dressed as Pulp Fiction characters. I've seen this film 6, 7, 8 times. I've always had a good time with it, with a smile on my face. So this is a call to action. It's time to leave this film alone. This film is like a little kid in a playground, and I just want to put my arm around him and say to everyone else, look, you've given this kid enough crap. It's time to lay off now. You've thrown enough punches. Just, you know, he has a soul in there. Let's try and respect it. You know, so like I said, I am the world's biggest Halloween Resurrection fan, and I will staunchly defend my right to put it 9th in the ranking today. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that. So here we have the new one. I'm a little bit sad that it's come ahead of Resurrection, but I do have a limit to my love of Halloween Resurrection, believe it or not. This film, Halloween Kills, is a tale of two halves for me. I was loving this for probably up to an hour. I mean, the fireman scene is amazing. The flashback scenes are brilliant. I loved all the mob stuff. I know some people didn't. I did. And the scene where Marion dies and Lindsay runs off into the trees, I thought all that stuff was really exciting as well. And then they drop the ball in the last half an hour. It's so desperately, tragically sad for me that the film takes a nosedive just when I was starting to think, oh my God, am I watching one of the best Halloween films of all time? No, definitely don't have that opinion now that I've seen the whole thing. I think the scene where Myers gets cornered in the street is where things start to go pear-shaped. That should have been an amazing scene. But they've just been so lazy with it. They filmed it in the laziest, low-budget way possible. And the death of Karen at the end was disappointing as well. They just did the most predictable thing with that. I mean, every Halloween fan has been predicting the death of Karen in this movie, and that's exactly what they gave us. There's just no shock factor to it. Remember that when you watched Halloween 4 for the first time and you get that ending with Jamie Lloyd, it's so unforgettable because you just don't expect it. This is like the complete opposite of that. We totally expect what we get at the end of this film, and it's just a little bit lackluster, especially when you pair it up with what we've just seen in the street with the mob. You know, that whole thing not being done quite right. So Halloween Kills is a frustrating film. It's still pretty good on the whole. You know, like I said, first hour, excellent. And at the back of my mind, I do wonder whether this film will improve once I've seen Halloween Ends. I don't like this film's sitting at the moment as being the latest film to come out. It needs Halloween Ends to come out to complete it so that it's not the end of the story. You know, once we can watch the lesser aspects of this film, i.e. the third act, and then jump into Halloween Ends, it'll be so much better than the way it is at the moment. Halloween 2018 is a very solid, if possibly unspectacular, Halloween movie. Its big advantage over Halloween Kills is the finale. I mean, regardless of how Myers gets to the Strode house, it's still a really exciting endgame between him and the three generations of Strode women. I really like the Alison and Karen characters way more than I ever liked the Josh Hartnett kid from H2O. I think this film does get a bit of slack from some fans because of the fact that it was the first one in 9 years. You know, in many ways, it just felt great to be watching any Michael Myers movies again. The film has one amazing thing in it and one thing that I really don't like. The amazing thing is that tracking shot where we see Myers going in and out of houses, just killing random people. And the really bad thing is Laurie's post-traumatic stress. It was really irritating in H2O. It's even worse here. I mean, she's an even bigger wreck, and this time she's had even longer to get over her childhood issues. I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but it's definitely the most annoying thing about this film. So into the top half of the ranking we go. I love all of the movies from here on in. It would take one hell of a good Halloween film in the future to come along and crack this top six. In fact, all these films that we're about to talk about between second and sixth, they're very interchangeable for me. They could easily change places year on year, depending on how I was feeling, because there is mere fractions between the film in second today and the film in sixth. Actually, this one right here, Rob Zombie's Halloween, has dropped a few spots since the last time I did my ranking, thus proving my point. I do love Rob Zombie's take on Halloween, though. I know a lot of people don't, but I just dig the man's style. I love what he did with this series. I was very sad when he didn't come back and do a third Halloween film. They did originally greenlight one, and then they sort of changed position on it, I think a few weeks after doing so. It doesn't bother me that this is not a traditional Halloween movie. I can easily compartmentalize it as its own thing. You know, the other films are not affected by the fact that these Rob Zombie films exist. So I will defend them to the hilt. And like I said earlier, don't hit me. Remember what we talked about. And straight away we have the other Rob Zombie one. I find it impossible to put other Halloween films between the two Rob Zombie films. I find it almost as difficult to decide which is the best of the Rob Zombie Halloweens. I think the last time I did my ranking, I had the original slightly ahead of part two. This time I flipped them, mainly on account of the fact that the structure of the first Rob Zombie Halloween is a little bit problematic. I don't mind it, you know, it gives it its own unique flavour, but I still think that Laurie should be in that film sooner. I don't know how they would have done that, but the second film is just more perfect for me. I love it from start to finish. There's not much about it that I would really criticise. The characters are in a very dark place, but that feels appropriate, you know. We're not doing the Halloween 5 thing of pretending that the previous year didn't happen. It's got a very emotional ending. I've only seen one cut of this. It's the one where Laurie ends up in the asylum. That works absolutely great for me. I don't need the other one. I have read what happens in it, but this ending is great. I like the music. I like what they do with the Loomis character. I think it's different and it's quite funny. Myers is just as good here with Tyler Mane as he was the first time around. Brad Dourif gives an amazing performance, of course he does, and Danielle Harris is brilliant as well. The whole film is, I don't know, I just don't understand why people don't like this movie or the one that came before it. This film has kept its same position in the ranking it had last time, which means, oddly enough, that 2 films have dropped below it, but also 2 films have overtaken it. So I guess it's done okay today. I've always loved The Curse of Michael Myers, though. I must stress the theatrical version. I've never seen the producer's cut. I've no interest in seeing the producer's cut. I wouldn't like it. I've seen 1 or 2 clips. The idea of Michael Myers freezing like a statue because somebody's thrown a couple of magic rocks on the ground, that shit ain't going to work for me. I love the theatrical cut as it is. Okay, the storyline doesn't entirely make sense, but I can easily sort of fix it in my head as I'm going along and watching it. That's okay. And it's got some really creepy scenes. The chase with Jamie leaving Smith's Grove at the start, brilliant. At the end, all the stuff with Tommy and I forget the name of the final girl in this, Cara. Again, great stuff, great final act. The little insert of Loomis crying out off screen is a little bit dodgy. I get that they did that in the editing room to sort of fix the movie, but I can tolerate that. There are some great kills all the way through, and speaking of which, if you don't enjoy watching John Strode's head blow up as if he was secretly a Weyland-Yutani robot, then as far as I'm concerned, you have no soul. This is the biggest mover today. I think I had this one as low as 8th the last time I did my Halloween ranking. Today it's up to 3rd. The biggest problem I used to have with this was the characterization or lack of. I mean, all the characters, even today, I will admit, are very thinly drawn, and there's no final girl. I mean, the position of final girl is vacant in this movie, and eventually Laurie Strode sort of says, well, if nobody else is going to take up the mantle, I guess I might as well get out of bed and run up and down a couple of corridors for 20 minutes, but I'm not happy about it. I'm definitely not coming back for the next film. But you know what? I'm over all that now. The last time I watched this film, I just didn't care anymore that the characters are not particularly great. I just enjoyed the film for what it is, and I had an amazing time. It's a really atmospheric film. It's a very pure Halloween film. I mean, it's a direct sequel to the original. It was made back in that era, quite close to Carpenter's first one. There's no baggage with this film in terms of the other timelines that would eventually spring up. And to my surprise, I've never watched it back to back with the first film. I'm definitely going to do that. I don't understand actually why I've not done that yet. I think every time I've put Halloween 1 on, I've never had time to do both films, but I'm determined. Next time I watch Halloween 1, and that time will not be far away because I always watch it every year, every couple of years, I'm going to make sure that I leave 3 hours aside so I can finally experience that double bill of Halloween 1 and 2. I'm sure it's excellent. I'm sure it's an excellent experience. This was the first full Halloween film I ever saw. I guess technically speaking, the last 20 minutes of the original was my first taste of Halloween, when I just happened to be changing channels one night. But I can't even tell you how much this particular one, Halloween 4, blew me away when I first saw it. I was only about 13. I rewatched it the very next night before it had to go back to the video store, and then I persuaded my dad to let me rent Halloween 5, and then Halloween 4 again, and for a while this was my favourite Halloween film. Granted, there weren't as many of them back then. For a time in the 90s, this was my favourite horror film, period, until I went on to watch a whole bunch of other horror films. But certainly throughout my life, I think I have at times forgotten just how important this particular film was to me. And it's a great slasher sequel. Anyway, I hope that it has finally found its rightful place in my Halloween rankings and doesn't become the victim of a future sneak attack by a Halloween 2 or a Curse of Michael Myers.